Good evening. You're on the smoking section with Stephen Helfer. Good to see you every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Actually, I can't see you, but I can imagine you. And it was interesting because Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights this week had a very interesting article that was from the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. There are so many journals out there, scientific journals, because American universities are turning out so many people who call themselves scientists. And it's interesting because it's really even hard to define science. What is science? And who has the right to call himself a scientist and who doesn't have that right? And we have so much respect for scientists. And we are told so many things that we are supposed to accept because it comes from scientists. The science is this, the science is that, scientists say this and scientists say that. And I think that a lot of people give up using their own experience and their own observations and their own reasoning and simply accept what scientists say. But be that as it may, in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine was an interesting study, and there's so many studies, but what appears to be the case is that for a lot of people who have quit smoking, the rates of marijuana use and binge drinking and depression have increased. And really this should be no surprise, because the more you restrict smoking, which is mildly an antidepressant, anti-anxiety plant, and the more expensive and the more people give up, quit the habit, it would follow that people do other things to try to cope with the vicissitudes of life. And I think that that is one of the reasons that we're having the opioid crisis, and that one of the reasons more and more people are taking psychoactive medications. In fact, I saw a recent figure that there are more people taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs and the like than there are smoking now. So people are switching from something that was very natural and very mild, tobacco that is, something that has been used for thousands of years, and resorting things that are made by pharmaceutical companies. Now, I'm not someone who bashes the pharmaceutical companies, because I think they have done some amazing things. But I certainly think it's not a good sign when more and more people are resorting to these drugs to get through their everyday lives. And it's not surprising, because so many people have given up smoking. It's almost impossible to smoke. You're stigmatized if you smoke. You're considered a pariah. And you can't smoke in so many places. So people are getting more nervous, they're getting more depressed, they're getting more anxious, and they are getting more likely to misuse alcohol, marijuana, and the like. Now, in this article, also is interesting because it gave what the average state tax is on tobacco, and it seems that the average in the whole country is $1.81, and New York State has the highest, which is $4.35 per pack. And of course, you've got to add on to that the federal taxes and what's called the Master Settlement Agreement. And, these taxes are really taking a bite out of a lot of people's paychecks or their disability payments, and really impacting their lives in a very ugly way. And as I've said before on this program, this is not just a regressive tax. Being a regressive tax is that a tax that affects poor people more than more affluent people, but this is a tax that is aimed almost exclusively at poorer people, because poor people are the ones who use tobacco more than affluent people. So this tax is there should be a term for a tax that really is aimed at the poor rather than simply affecting them more. So this is worse than a regressive tax. But in the same article that was posted on this article that was posted on our Facebook page, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights, it noted that if you raise the taxes, let's say $1 on a package of cigarettes, the number of people who smoke goes down a lot. Well, that's not rocket science, but it certainly seems to undercut that claim that is often made that nicotine and tobacco are very addictive, because if something is very addictive, it is not, the price could be raised a lot and people would be unable to stop, but they seem to be able to stop many people seem to be able to stop pretty easily, except for people like me who really enjoy tobacco and feel that it enhances my life and that I'm not going to quit. And I'm not going to be cowed into quitting by a lot of scare tactics and stuff. But right now, of course, in the United States, according to this article, there are more former smokers than there are smokers. Like right now, the percentage of adults who smoke is supposed to be about 14%. And there are more adults who have given up smoking than 14%. So this again would undercut that claim that tobacco and nicotine is so addictive, because if it were so addictive, you wouldn't have so many people who successfully give up smoking without any kind of treatment. They don't need to go into detox. They don't need to take any kind of pharmaceutical to help them. They just quit smoking, and they suffer only the mildest discomfort, a few days of irritability, a few days of lack of concentration, and that's about it. And so this idea that tobacco and nicotine are so addictive is not supported by the evidence. And even though you have a lot of people who call themselves scientists who like to make this claim, but of course, when they raise the taxes on smoking, then they switch gears and they say, oh, well, if you don't want to pay the taxes, just quit smoking. It's your choice. So evidently, when they want to raise the taxes, all of a sudden their spiel is not that nicotine is so addictive and tobacco is so addictive, but that it's just a selfish choice on the part of people, which is irresponsible and should be punished with high taxes. Well, this week I'm going to have a smoker of the week. We'll see how this photograph comes up. I hope it comes up nice and big on the screen. Seems to be doing that. Seems the technology seems to be cooperating tonight. And this man is Robert Peretti. And Robert Peretti was a owner of Peretti's tobacco store, which is in Park Square. And it is one of the oldest tobacco stores in the country. Right now it is being run by the fourth generation, but I'm not sure of that. But certainly Peretti was the third generation running that tobacco store. And it's in Park Square. It's a wonderful store. And Robert Peretti died last June at the age of 98. So he is not exactly a poster boy for the anti-smoking movement in the sense that he was a very adamant and avid pipe smoker. He was known as a great blender of tobacco and actually a maker of pipes. I don't think they make pipes at Peretti's anymore, but the store opened in 1870 and it is still running today. So that's 150 years. It's got to be, I would guess it's maybe the oldest store in the city of Boston. Although that would be an interesting question for the Boston Historical Society. Of course, the anti-smoking Nazis would like to shut it down, obliterate its legacy, etc. But it's there. And again, Robert Peretti died last summer at the age of 98. He was a veteran of World War II. He was in the U.S. Navy. He left 5 children, I think 11 grandchildren and 8 great-grandchildren. So that is a great legacy for a smoker, for anybody. And again, this is evidence that the anti-smoking movement is that smoking is not the great. Let's see, now we're trying to get me back on. Let's see how this works. That the anti-smoking movement is not, that tobacco is not the great evil that it is depicted of being. Now, there was something that I thought was very interesting, and we talked about it on the Smoky Drinky Bar last Saturday, and that is what is called a tobacco researcher in New Zealand. Of course, when they say a tobacco researcher, what that means is an anti-smoking propagandist. They are not really doing research. They are simply trying to propagandize against tobacco and do things that will cause discomfort to smokers and attack tobacco companies, businesses that smokers depend on. But this woman seemed to be a bit of a rebel, and her name is Dr. Marwar Glover, I think. And she was talking about, she was testifying against a proposed law in New Zealand that would make it illegal to smoke in a car with someone under the age of 18. And she actually said that there is no evidence that smoking in cars is linked to any disease for children. And she admits, and this was great, that the anti-smoking movement, you could say anywhere, but in New Zealand, which has the strictest anti-smoking laws in the world, that they have long exaggerated the harms of secondhand smoke, and that it has become very discriminatory and very because it discriminates. And particularly, she talks about the Maoris, who are the indigenous people in New Zealand, and they have very high smoking rates. In fact, according to Dr. Glover, that 37% of Maori women smoke, which is really nice to hear that. And therefore, they would be the ones who would be bear the brunt of this discriminatory law. Dr. Glover also points out that public health officials and anti-smoking activists are overwhelmingly white middle-class women, and they seem to be I think people who get into public health are often busybodies. At one time, public health was more to fight infectious diseases, they weren't aimed so much at modifying people's behavior, but now it seems public health has really moved and really, which is natural. I mean, because human beings like power. I think that is almost axiomatic. Most human beings, it seems to be an innate characteristic that we like power, and that when given the opportunity, it varies from person to person, will try to rule over other people. So, and I think people who gravitate towards public health may be even more that way than other people. And then, of course, Dr. Glover was viciously attacked. And, for example, Children's Commissioner Andrew Beecroft said, "The law puts a line in the sand. If you cross that line, there are going to be consequences." So more and more they want to punish people who smoke, and more it seems to be that it is poorer people being punished by affluent people, being taxed by affluent people. And I think it's very important to note that, and this was something that Dr. Michael Siegel at Boston University pointed out, that if a child is exposed to secondhand smoke in a car, I mean, we're talking about a short exposure. This is not something that is prolonged. And it's very, very different, for example, than, and there's no danger, and even assuming, for the sake of argument, that many, many years of exposure to secondhand smoke will increase the risks of certain diseases. This danger about smoking in a car is not acute. The child is not going to suffer a heart attack. It's not like, for example, a child not wearing a seatbelt, for which there is better evidence. I mean, if one gets in an accident and the child is not in the seatbelt and the child is thrown from the car, the child might die. There is nobody who suggests, even the wildest, most anti-smoking Nazi in the world does not suggest that exposing a young child to smoke in a car is in any way going to endanger the child's life. So that's something that Michael Siegel pointed out. There is no acute danger. There's no acute danger of when one is exposed to secondhand smoke, that one is going to suffer anything that could be acutely dangerous. It's not like carbon monoxide, which doesn't smell and which can kill you in a matter of a couple of hours. People smoke in very smoky bars. They there for years and years, and I have never seen anybody drop dead from secondhand smoke in a smoky bar. Well, let's see here who's calling. You're on the smoking section. Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Steve, it's David.
David, how are you?
I can hear you faintly.
Only faintly. Well,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
I forgot to ask you today if you had seen the Tarantino movie.
I have not seen the Tarantino movie, but I plan to see it tomorrow. Tell me about it.
Oh, well, I was hoping you had seen it because you could talk about all the smoking in it. We'll have to wait on that one.
Is there a lot of smoking in the Tarantino movie?
Yes, there is, quite a bit.
Did you notice any kind of propagandistic attachments to it? So, for example, are the bad guys smoking more than the good guys? Or are the people who are smoking in worse health?
No, it's the star. The main star, DiCaprio, is shown smoking a lot.
Now,
And
but
he's a pretty likable character.
is he? Now, I'm told by Emily that he gets up in the morning and he does a lot of coughing. Did you notice that?
Yes, they do. Yeah, in fact, they show him coughing, I think, quite a bit. You're right.
Really? So that
Yeah, I
could,
just remembered that.
that could be propagandism on the part of Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Yeah. Well, anyway, I think you'll enjoy it, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about it.
All right, I'm going to see it tomorrow, and I will definitely talk about it on my next show.
Okay.
Thanks for calling.
Ciao.
Ciao. David Ajamian. And by the way, I wanted to shout out to Barry Holman, I think, who's all the way in Denmark, where fortunately the anti-smoking Nazis have not completely taken over the country as they have in New Zealand and apparently to a large extent in Great Britain. So if Barry's watching, hello, I hope you find the show moderately entertaining. I do my best, I guess. And also a shout out to Maria at the Cambridge Hospital, who I see in the cafeteria. And I'm very anxious to go to the Italian festival in East Cambridge the following weekend or a week from Labor Day. There was something else. Michael McFadden posted something about a program that was on public television, which from his posting I gathered also admitted that the whole anti-smoking campaign has been using scare tactics for many years, and even they are admitting that they're not saying that, like I do, that smoking enhances life, but they are saying that a lot of the things they have done are simply scare tactics and not based in what we call good science or good medical information. I don't know if Michael is watching the show. Sometimes he does, way down in Philadelphia. But maybe if he does watch it, we could talk about that next week, because I plan to be here next week, God willing. As the Bible says, we never know the hour or the day. So we need to be prepared. And how we prepare is, of course, the question. But Audrey Silk of New York City Clash posted an interesting article about how colleges, public colleges, are being pressured in Ohio to ban smoking on their campuses. But at one college called Notre Dame College, the only place to smoke is in these very far off corners, and the director of human resources said that if you smoke, you should be uncomfortable, really warm, really cold, really wet. In other words, you should be punished. Now, I assume this college, Notre Dame College, is a Christian college, and that certainly does not jibe with Christianity. I'm sure Jesus would be with the smokers. Thanks for watching.